welcome. I'm Catherine Hadro, and this is EWTN Pro-Life Weekly.
There is one aspect of this that when I look at it, I feel punched in the gut. That we take American taxpayer dollars and pay for abortions overseas.
Powerful plea. Catholic Congressman Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska called on his colleagues to stop the funding of abortions abroad, even referencing Pope Francis. We speak with Representative Fortenberry to hear more and to hear about his new pro-life bill, the Care for Her Act. Victory in the courts. Iowa's High Court rules in favor of the state, allowing it to deny Planned Parenthood federal funding for sex education in schools. We're joined by a former Planned Parenthood sex education instructor turned pro-life advocate who reacts to the news and tells us what parents need to know about Planned Parenthood in their children's schools. Wholistic Feminism. Catholic mother of 7 and board-certified lactation consult, Leah Jacobson has a new book out about the flaws of modern feminism and how to put women's health care back in line with women's natural bodies. Catholic Congressman Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska quoted Pope Francis in a powerful speech last week against the funding of abortions abroad.
We take our most divisive social issue, which is not settled in our nation, and we export it to peoples around the world in violation of their cultural norms, undermining the very purpose of diplomacy. It smacks of arrogance, it smacks of elitism, and Pope Francis has called this ideological colonization.
These remarks came during a House Appropriations Committee meeting, Fortenberry saying the purpose of foreign aid is to uphold human dignity, not to export abortion. In another pro-life push, the Catholic congressman recently introduced pro-life legislation called the Care for Her Act to care for expectant mothers and their babies. Among other things, it allows mothers to get a tax credit for unborn children and provides her with a list of available resources. Joining us now on Zoom is Representative Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska. Congressman, welcome back to the show. You brought up Pope Francis and his warning against ideological colonization. Can you explain how this applies to U.S. foreign aid and abortion?
Yes, Catherine, thank you so much for highlighting this essential issue. Of course, those of us who firmly believe in the rights of all people, that we ought to be in a space of tolerance, particularly given the divisions that we've seen over the last year, and fully believe that we shouldn't exclude one group of persons, namely the unborn and their mothers, have to speak out clearly about this aggressive, unthinkable attempt now to take our most divisive social issue and export it onto the poor of the world. For 50 years now, there's been a settlement in this regard. Even people who don't agree on the life issue have agreed that taxpayer money should not go for the provision of abortion here in America, and certainly not overseas. 60% of Americans agree with that here, but when you move the idea to, again, funding abortion overseas, it gets closer to 80%. It's unthinkable that we've gotten to this space. It was a moment to speak clearly because I believe this smacks of arrogance and elitism. It is an ideological colonization, as the Pope has said. And it actually is counterproductive to the norms of diplomacy, which are to be in the space of mutuality, seeking to build trust and friendships so that everyone is safe and there can be a healthy prosperity. How does this forward that? That was the question to the committee.
Well, thank you for speaking so clearly on that. I want to turn to a different topic. You recently introduced your piece of pro-life legislation, the Care for Her Act. I understand you made it to ensure pregnant women know which resources are available to them. Congressman, do you see opportunity for bipartisan support here? Shouldn't everyone want to support a pregnant woman?
Catherine, I believe that this could be a transformative piece of legislation. Of course, we stand against the horror of abortion because it takes the life of the unborn child and it harms women and it creates profit for the abortion industry led by Planned Parenthood. All of those things are so damaging to the soul of America. On the other side of this is about what we're also for. In that moment of vulnerability, when there is news of an unexpected pregnancy, it says fundamentally that we are committed to care as a community for the journey of life, for the unborn child, at the moment of birth and after birth, with this full complement of services, both medical as well as mentorship, housing, employment. We also give a tax credit for the unborn child. We do that for children, and we do move it now to the unborn child. What this does is make a declarative statement that the United States government backs life, and we will commit resources to helping persons who are in vulnerable circumstances, again, before birth, at birth, and after birth. I'm excited by the possibility that this could break a new chapter of pro-life communications and maybe invite people who have never considered our position before.
I hope so too. Congressman, we have just over 1 minute left, but I do want to ask you about this. You sit on the House Appropriations Committee, which is responsible for reviewing and marking up President Biden's budget proposal. He gutted the Hyde Amendment. Congressman, can you tell us the latest? Where do things stand now with Biden's budget?
Well, again, remember President Biden used to be for the Hyde Amendment before he is now against it. And it's really, really distressing because, again, all this does is say taxpayer money will not be used to fund abortion. About 60% of Americans agree with that. Again, when you move the equation overseas, it's 80%. So most people see that even though they might not be with us in terms of a fullness of a pro-life view, they do not agree that taxpayer money should be going there. So this is an ideological statement driven by those who, again, are going to force this consideration on the American people against their will. It's so destructive and harmful, and it destroys the ability to be bipartisan and do important things like keeping our country safe, promoting the proper type of economic prosperity, and protecting those who are in vulnerable circumstances. I really hope that we can fix this before the end of the year, or else this budget process is going to really break. We're dug in. We're not going to let this happen. We cannot let this happen to America.
Absolutely. Well, grateful for your pro-life leadership. Representative Jeff Fortenberry, Nebraska, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
To continue the discussion, we are joined in studio by Prudence Robertson, Communications Associate at the Susan B. Anthony List. Prudence, great to speak with you. We just heard from Representative Fortenberry about the latest on Hyde. In recent days, a series of pro-life lawmakers have called for a vote on H.R. 18, which would make the Hyde Amendment permanent law. Do you think Speaker Pelosi will allow for a vote on this?
Well, unfortunately, our so-called Catholic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is about as extreme as they come on abortion. Most recently, she dodged a question on whether or not she believes a 15-week-old baby growing in the womb is a human being. But, you know, she should have no problem, you know, calling for a vote on the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act. If this is really where she stands on abortion, if this is really where she's put her stake in the ground, her constituents deserve to know that. And it's so important that we have strong members of Congress like Representative Fortenberry and other members on the Appropriations Committee fighting this tough battle for Hyde and dozens of other pro-life amendments, riders that apply to different funding streams that keep taxpayer money out of the abortion industry.
Absolutely. That's a great reminder about those other riders as well. As lawmakers have been debating Hyde on Capitol Hill, take a listen to what Democrat Representative Susie Lee of Nevada had to say. Listen to this.
I rise in strong opposition to this amendment. I grew up as a Catholic. I'm one of 8 children. I have 2 children of my own. And the one thing that I value most is that this is an incredibly personal decision and one that women should be able to make themselves.
Prudence, what's your response to that, especially as a fellow Catholic?
Well, her stance truly is misguided and tragic. You know, I am part of a big Catholic family. My mom is one of 8 children, and I'm one of 4, and I always told my parents that I wanted more siblings. You know, my family is the source of my deeply held pro-life views. And the truth is that abortion is at the center of the breakdown of the family, Catherine. And a child growing in the womb isn't just a medical condition, it's a human life. And to say that anyone should have the choice to snuff out that life is a complete travesty. You know, it's so important that we are raising awareness and asserting the humanity of the unborn child, especially when members like Nancy Pelosi and Representative Lee claim to be lifting women up, but really their statements just show a complete disregard for what women need, especially when facing an unplanned pregnancy, and that is support and love and compassion.
Absolutely, that's well said. Prudence, we have just over a minute left, but I do want to ask, during the House Appropriations Committee meeting, Congressman Fortenberry, as we shared earlier, also raised the concern of the funding of abortion abroad. How concerning is that today? Because I know the Trump administration did take action to stop that.
Yes, he made huge strides in this realm to protect Americans from having to fund abortion overseas and protecting the unborn. But Democrats just last week, they moved to repeal the Helms Amendment, which directly bans federal funding of abortion overseas. They also want to double the funding that groups like the UNFPA receive. And this is a group that has openly partnered with some of the worst human rights abusers in our world, such as China and North Korea. They support China's population control policies. And Democrats also want to expand funding for other groups that are involved in supporting coercive abortion and even forced sterilization of women in these foreign nations. And you know, the truth is, when we fund abortion in these countries, we are compounding crises that are already occurring and already causing women to suffer. And you know, like Representative Fortenberry said, Americans have no interest in becoming the #1 exporter of abortion overseas. This really just has to be stopped.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing us up to speed with the latest on Capitol Hill. Prudence Robertson of the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
The Justice Department announced last week it is halting federal executions. Attorney General Merrick Garland says he's imposing a moratorium on federal executions while the Justice Department conducts a review of its policies and procedures. This follows a historic use of capital punishment by the Trump administration, which carried out 13 executions in 6 months. President Biden has said he opposes the death penalty, and his team has vowed he would take action to stop it while in office. Pope Francis has reiterated that the death penalty is inadmissible. Iowa Supreme Court last week ruled in favor of the state to deny Planned Parenthood from entering schools to teach sex education with federal funding. This reverses a judge's ruling from last year that found Iowa's law unconstitutional. A majority of justices concluded having abortion providers teach sex education could undermine goals of promoting abstinence and reducing teenage pregnancy. Planned Parenthood reacted by saying they have received funding since 2005 and have used Iowa's state-approved curriculum. Joining us now on Skype is Monica Cline, a former Title X Planned Parenthood-educated sex education instructor turned pro-life advocate. Today, she's the founder of It Takes a Family. Monica, welcome back. Good to speak with you. Planned Parenthood has received funding for sex education in Iowa for the last 16 years. Can you put into perspective for us the significance of this ruling?
This is incredibly significant. I mean, it was such a celebration for the people of Iowa. I'm just so proud of Justice Oakley, who made this ruling. And she is correct. You know, that Iowa has decided that they are a pro-life state. And this curriculum is absolutely about pushing sexuality and sexualizing children and abortion. You know, I went ahead and looked into the programs that they were implementing in Iowa. And all of the programs, I was looking at the research findings, and all of them were showing that they had very little positive results or null effects, or even at times, you know, adverse effects due to these types of interventions on the children. And so, and the other thing I found is that they didn't promote abstinence at all. Mm-hmm. These programs are actually created to teach children about sexuality in order for them to become sexually active. So the judgment was absolutely correct. These programs are about sexualizing children and leading them to abortion. That is what sex education is. Comprehensive sexuality education is all about grooming children and marketing, using it as a marketing tool to lead to abortion.
Wow. Monica, you were never formally a Planned Parenthood employee, but you were trained by them and you worked with them. Can you tell us, what is Planned Parenthood's goal with their sex education in schools? Expand on that.
Absolutely. So I was actually employed by a gay organization to do HIV prevention education in the community. And within a month of working with them, they sent me across the street to Planned Parenthood, and I was mentored by the director of sex education of the Greater Austin area Planned Parenthood on how to share this sex education message with children. And one of the first things that she told me was that I was to look at these young kids as young as in middle school. She even mentioned some girls coming in as young as 10. And she said, you need to see them and realize that they are sexually active, and if they haven't, they will be. And it's our job as sex educators to teach them about all forms of sexuality to ensure that they're reducing their risk. And so their goal really is not to ever their philosophy and their belief about our children is highly sexualized. They believe that abstinence is laughable. They see parents as a barrier to service because they know parents are going to protect them. And that's actually something that they told me. They wanted to keep parents out of the picture. So when we're talking about the breakdown of family, it begins with sex education. You know, I was listening also to your previous people on your show just now talking about how abortion is the breakdown of the family. Absolutely. It all begins with sex education. It's about keeping parents out of the picture and ensuring that those children not only dehumanize themselves through the act of sex outside of marriage, but then to dehumanize the preborn child through abortion.
That's so disturbing. Thank you, Monica, for sharing that. We have just about a minute left, but can you tell us when you worked with Planned Parenthood and shared their sex education, did you ever mention or bring up the topic of abortion with students?
Absolutely. So the kind of relationship that I had with Planned Parenthood is that all of the HIV organizations, the STD organizations of the city, as well as Planned Parenthood, we all work together. We just collaborated with one another. We would fill in with one another, for one another, and then we would refer to each other. So if there was someone in the community that wanted women's health care, quote unquote, and abortion, then we would be referring them to Planned Parenthood. And so right now, the pro-life community is always asking, how is it that so many people know about their services? How is it that they're attracting so many people? And it's because they had people like me. With government funding, I was paid 40 hours a week to walk the streets of these neighborhoods to not only teach on sex education, but then to refer people to Planned Parenthood. And so there's no question that there's a lot of money being put into so many communities to sexualize children and lead them to the services that Planned Parenthood is providing, which is majority abortion.
Well, I'm just so grateful for your voice and your witness today. And I want to point out to our viewers, they can find out more about your work at ittakesafamily.org. Monica Cline, founder of It Takes a Family, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, Planned Parenthood tries to dodge the traumatizing experience of an American Olympian athlete who underwent an abortion. I speak out next. Plus, Catholic mother of 7, Leah Jacobson, joins us to discuss her new book, Wholistic Feminism, right after the break.
Mother Angelica, the foundress of EWTN. Her ever-faithful teachings and inspired writings have brought us closer to our Lord throughout the years. In A Holy Hour with Mother Angelica, a new release from EWTN Publishing, Mother shares the fruit of her years in prayerful reflection and adoration. This collection of Mother's personal prayers, meditations, and intentions brings into focus the treasure of the Blessed Sacrament in our lives. For a donation of $100 or more, we'll send you A Holy Hour with Mother Angelica and also A Biblical Way of Praying the Mass, Eucharistic Wisdom of Venerable Bruno Lanteri by popular EWTN host and retreat master Father Timothy Gallagher. And for the special Children in Your Life, ABC, Get to Know the Saints with Me, a colorfully illustrated introduction to our Catholic saints. When you and your family read inspirational Catholic books like these, you grow closer to Jesus and reflect His light to others. And with your gift today, you are helping to share the eternal Word to the world. To take advantage of this special summer offer and support EWTN's mission, make an online donation at EWTN.com/books or give us a call at 1-800-447-EWTN. Online and phone donations only, please. Quantities are limited, so make your gift today.
Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. Planned Parenthood dodges an Olympian's abortion trauma. That is this week's Speak Out segment. And what's a truly heartbreaking story, Olympic gold medalist Brianna McNeil tells the New York Times it was her abortion trauma that caused her to miss her mandatory drug test, which is ultimately why she's been suspended from the Olympics for 5 years and will miss the Tokyo Summer Games. McNeil missed her mandatory drug test 2 days after she had an abortion in January 2020. She was recovering and says she did not hear the official at her door. The crux of her case reportedly revolves around the fact that McNeil changed the abortion date on her doctor's note by 1 day, believing she got the procedure date wrong. Here's reporting from the New York Times. Quote, in its case against her, McNeil said, World Athletics said it didn't believe she was so traumatized by the abortion that she got the date of the procedure wrong. McNeil said that as a Christian, she felt guilt about the abortion, which she underwent so she could compete in the 2020 Games. She said she was even more crushed when the Games were postponed until 2021 because the delay meant she could have had the baby after all. The Times continues, McNeil had been so shaken and disoriented by the abortion, she said, that it didn't occur to her that changing the date would be a bad thing. And what was an acknowledgement about the McNeil case and other recent Olympic suspensions, Planned Parenthood President Alexis McGill Johnson tweeted, abortion, weed, and now black hair. What other ways can we penalize black women Olympians? The group Planned Parenthood Texas Votes also acknowledged this story, writing in part, Brianna McNeil should have been able to share her abortion story on her own terms. How can Planned Parenthood acknowledge Brianna McNeil's heartbreaking story and completely ignore her abortion trauma at the center of it? Post-abortion trauma is very real, despite the abortion industry's silence on it. Studies show that many women suffer emotionally. They have an increased risk of depression and anxiety, an increased risk of alcohol and drug abuse, and tragically, suicide. There is always hope and healing, praise God, and Project Rachel is a great resource for abortion healing. My heart breaks that Brianna McNeil felt that she needed to abort her child to compete in the Olympics, only for the Olympics to be postponed by 1 year. But abortion trauma and abortion regret is something the abortion business won't tell women. It's an inconvenient truth that gets in the way of their business. But can each one of us please take a moment to pray for Brianna McNeil's healing? Let us remember her and her baby in prayer. Maybe you pause this program right now and pray, or maybe you carve out time right when the show ends, whatever it is. Please take time to pray for Brianna McNeil and her baby. Pray she may experience the Lord's radical love, mercy, and healing. A Catholic mother of 7 who has worked in campus ministry and today women's healthcare says there's a problem with modern feminism and it is time for the women's movement to be made whole. In her new book, Wholistic Feminism, Healing the Identity Crisis Caused by the Women's Movement, author Leah Jacobson says it's time for a new type of feminism, one where women are appreciated and supported, including for the unique gifts of the woman's body. Jacobson writes, rather than elevating culture to appreciate and support women's bodies, we settled for a culture that says our bodies are for sexual pleasure only, making the right to alter, suppress, and destroy our fertile, life-giving female bodies the supreme women's right. Joining us now on Skype is the author of Wholistic Feminism herself, Leah Jacobson. In addition to being a Catholic wife and mother to 7, Leah is also a board-certified lactation consultant and founder of the Guiding Star Project. Leah, congratulations on this new book. You write that you do not fit today's modern feminism. Tell us, what is your vision for holistic feminism?
Hi. Thanks, Catherine, for having me on. I think so many of us, especially Catholic women and Catholic mothers, we recognize that the feminist movement, the women's movement, really hasn't listened to our voices for a very long time. And so I think part of my vision and my hope for holistic feminism is to present a new wave of the women's movement that really, truly is inclusive, that brings in voices of women like us. It helps women to know their identity, to feel happiness with the choices they make. Right now, women who currently really love and appreciate their God-given fertility, we don't really have a seat at the table in the women's movement. And so it's my hope that this book will open that door for us.
That's beautiful. When it comes to fertility, you say women deserve to receive information based on their biological reality. For example, natural family planning. Leah, can you break down why this would be empowering for women and not the other way around?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as women, the biological reality of our female body is that when it's healthy and when it's optimized, we should ovulate, menstruate, gestate, and lactate. And when that information is withheld from us, or when it's not presented neutrally, even just scientifically saying that these are healthy functions of a woman's body, it prevents us from fully understanding our own health care. There's been a lot of discussion about the menstrual cycle for women as the fifth vital sign, and that we really can't truly know our status as a healthy or an unhealthy individual if we don't know how to track our own fertility. This is information that we deserve to have, just like we deserve to know our blood pressure. It's a marker of health for us, and so it's critical and essential. This is a woman's rights issue.
Absolutely. That is so well said. Leah, you are a former campus minister. What did you witness on the college campus that really highlights the need for this vision of holistic feminism?
You know, I think holistic feminism and Guiding Star was really born in campus ministry. My husband Josh and I served as the campus ministers for the first 3 years of our marriage at the University of Minnesota Duluth. And it was in those really intimate conversations with students where they were coming to us in the Newman House and talking about their desires, you know, to maybe get married or pursue a family, that we became acutely aware of how much students really don't know. Even our faithful students that are raised in Catholic homes and that are going through our religious ed programs, very little has been shared about the actual physical mechanisms of their fertility. And as that translates into married life and decisions on family planning, we just became kind of passionate about telling young people the truth about who they were created to be. I think some of what we're seeing right now in our culture in terms of identity, gender confusion, just this sense of confusion in general comes from the fact that we are not telling young people the whole truth about who they are and who they were created to be. You know, and in putting that in line with theology of the body and the teachings of the church, that is what equips young people to live lives of purpose and meaning. This all fits together. Our physical body, we have to embrace and understand and love it.
That's so beautiful. Quick question, Leah, as we wrap up this interview. What do you want women to learn or take away from your book, Holistic Feminism?
Oh gosh, I hope so many things. I hope they realize that they're not alone, that there's many of us that, you know, want to be part of the women's movement, that want to see, you know, issues of equality and brought forward, but that we have the power as women to take control of our healthcare, and that we as consumers in healthcare, that when we start to speak up and just request and ask, that our healthcare providers and really that culture at large shifts its definition of the expectations for a healthy female body, that we collectively have a voice and have a power. And so I hope women will feel, you know, that they're not alone, that they understand that we can turn the women's movement in the direction that we want.
That's so beautiful. Congratulations again on your book, Leah Jacobson, author of Holistic Feminism. And that does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Until next time, we'd love to hear from you. Find us on social media at EWTN Pro-Life on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're there. You can also send us a message by emailing prolifeweekly@EWTN.com. We love to hear from you. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.
At Fatima, Our Lady urged the world to find refuge in her Immaculate Heart. Join the World Apostolate of Fatima for a special event featuring a talk on the Blessed Mother's message to the world, followed by Mass celebrated by Raymond Leo Cardinal Burke. EWTN takes you to St. John Cantius Church in Chicago for Holy Mass in honor of Our Lady.
Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on EWTN. EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.